Full A+ ലേക്കുള്ള വഴി ഇനി തനിയെ തുറക്കാം. Subscribe to the ENCLAPS channel. Ring the bell button and open success. It's that easy.
Let's move on. Global pressure belts. Studies have revealed that the atmospheric pressure is more or less the same between certain latitudes. Based on this, there is a pattern of alternate high and low pressure belts over the Earth. These are called pressure belts. Due to the spherical shape of the Earth, different parts of the Earth are heated unequally. At the equator region, warm air being light rises at the equator and thus creates a low pressure. Whereas the polar regions, the cold air sinks and an area of high pressure is created. In the subpolar region, around latitudes 60 degrees to 65 degrees north and south of the equator, the rotation of the Earth flings the bulk of the air towards the equator, creating a low pressure belt. Now let's have a look at the 4 major pressure belts on the Earth. Now let's have a look at the 4 major pressure belts on the Earth. Remember, these belts are not continuous because the surface of the Earth is made of both land and water. Both get heated in different ways. The first pressure belt is the equatorial low pressure belt that extends up to 5 degrees north and south of the equator. Being equator region, it receives direct sun rays and thus the air here is warm. The hot air expands and becomes light and rises. Hence, it creates a belt of low pressure. This is a region of calm air with very little wind. Therefore, it is also known as the doldrums. The second pressure belt is a subtropical high pressure belt that coincides with latitudes of 30 degrees to 35 degrees north and south of the equator. The air that rises at the equator eventually meets the tropopause where it can rise no further. It cools down as it rises and spreads outwards towards the poles, gradually cooling and sinking back down to the surface about 30 degrees north and south of the equator, which causes an increase in air pressure. The air flings of the subpolar regions due to the rotation of the Earth also descends in this region, thus adding to the already high pressure existing in this region. The subtropical high pressure belt is an area of strong winds and so it's also known as host latitudes. The third major air pressure belt is subpolar low pressure belt around latitude 60 degrees and 65 degrees north and south of the equator. It is created mainly due to the rotation of the Earth, which swings the bulk of the air towards the equator. These are the areas of storminess, especially in winter. The fourth and last major air pressure belt is the polar high pressure belt located in the polar region. This belt is created because in this region the air is extremely cold and heavy, leading to high pressure. Since pressure belts are caused mainly due to the temperature differences on the Earth's surface, they move in response to the migration of the sun. According to this apparent movement of the sun, the pressure belts shift northward during the period of sun's northward progression and towards the south during the period of its southward progression. So, the shifting of pressure belts affects the direction of wind flow, causing wind belts during the year. Or in simple terms, we can say that global variations in atmospheric pressure lead to the formation of winds. Then, what do you mean by wind? How do they form? Wind is something that we cannot hold, but we can feel its force. So, the horizontal movement of air from a high pressure zone to a low pressure zone is called wind. And it is caused by the uneven heating of Earth by sun. A wind is always named by the direction from which it blows. For example, a west wind comes from the west, a north wind comes from the north. The peculiarities of the source region means the area from which the wind is coming from, influence the nature of the wind. For example, a wind blowing from the sea will be saturated with moisture, whereas the moisture content will be less in winds blowing from dry regions. And we all know that there are different types of winds on the Earth's surface, ranging from light breeze that make leaves flutter to cyclones that cause widespread damage. Now let's discuss about the factors affecting the speed and direction of wind. These are the three major factors that affect wind speed and direction. They are pressure gradient, Coriolis force, and friction. Let's examine them one by one. As you all know, the atmospheric pressure is not uniform everywhere on the Earth's surface. The pressure gradient is said to be steeper when the pressure difference between two near places is more. Closely spaced isobars, like in this picture, indicate steep pressure gradient. Well, widely spaced isobars indicate gradual pressure gradient, like in here. Next factor that affects the speed and direction of wind is Coriolis force. In 1935, Gustave Gaspar de Coriolis explained that any freely moving bodies, especially air masses, get deflected to the right in the northern hemisphere and to the left in the southern hemisphere. This is caused by the spinning of the earth on its axis, causes the air masses or any moving bodies to be deflected. The Coriolis effect is absent at the equator but increases in strength towards the poles. Based on this Coriolis effect, Admiral Ferrel found out that in the northern hemisphere, winds deflect towards their right and those in the southern hemisphere deflect towards their left. The third and last factor that affects wind speed and direction is friction. These are the images of two different landscapes, right? There is an ocean surface in the first image and a mountain range in the second one. In which of these situations do winds blow smoothly? So, the speed of wind will be higher over ocean surfaces and plains because the obstruction or friction is less. On the other hand, the friction will be more along difficult terrains such as places with dense forest cover, mountain ranges and all. And the speed of wind will be less in those places. Now we have discussed about the factors affecting wind speed and direction. See you later.
3 ലക്ഷത്തിലേറെ വരുന്ന ചോദ്യോത്തരങ്ങൾ ഏറ്റവും കുറഞ്ഞ ചിലവിൽ സ്വന്തമാക്കുവാൻ ഉടൻ തന്നെ ഡൗൺലോഡ് ചെയ്യൂ ENCLAPS the Learning App.